Peter, John, Elliott, Elliott.
And what is your birthday?
My birth date is on the 30th of the 7th, 33.
19?
19.
19?
Yeah, not 18, 19.
19 what?
33.
33. So you are young.
I am young.
And you born on July 30.
That's right.
Right. Where were you born?
In Adelaide, South Australia.
Where? Could you spell it?
Adelaide?
Yeah.
Adelaide. Adelaide.
Adelaide.
Adelaide.
Oh, D-E. Okay.
Okay.
And tell me about your family when you were growing up. Your siblings. How many siblings and your parents?
Okay. My parents, my father was part of a family of 6, 3 boys and 3 girls that grew up in the farming areas. My great-grandfather actually was a migrant from England in 1855.
1855.
He was a veterinarian and blacksmith, and he bought the first land in the Riverton area in South Australia, which is right up north. And he serviced as the farmers came in and started growing cereal crops. He provided veterinary services for them and blacksmith services. So that was the beginning, and he was a man that had a lot of experience in dealing with people. He was a lay preacher in a Christian church. And his whole family grew up in a very stable family environment. Each of the boys were farmers. My father and my uncle served in World War I, one in the Air Force and the other in the Army. So my father, because of physical disabilities created out of his military service, was limited in the amount of work that he could do. He had to do light work, and that meant during the Depression years it was very difficult to find work, particularly light work. However, my mother died when I was 16 months old, and my eldest brother, he died a year later, and my other brother, I had no sisters, my other brother and I lived with my father's sister in Goolwa, which was at the mouth of the River Murray in South Australia. So we grew up there, and we had a number of years with her, and then my father married again, and when we were living up in the country areas, I used to be a normal farm boy, milk the cows, and do all of that sort of thing. Go to school where there were 27 students in the school, it's just a country school, walk through the bush each day and walk home, bring the cows home and milk them. So that was a bit of a background. Then when my father married again, we went down to the city, and my father asked me how I was getting on at school, because we were used to walking 3 miles to school in the bush, but down in the city I only had to walk a mile to the school. And he asked me how I was getting on. I said, I'm fine, but all of the children go to school, they ride bicycles. He said, oh, you want a bicycle? And I said, yes, that would be good. He said, I will get you a job. And so he got me a job selling papers, and I sold them for 3 years. And in that time, I was able to buy a housing block 5 miles from the centre of the city and buy my bicycle and other things. So I had a good grounding. When the war in Korea started, I was working at the News and Mail in Adelaide, and a lot of my mates said, we should be in this, so we went and enlisted. And
so before you go into the detail of this military stuff, I would like to ask you this. Good idea. Did you learn anything about Korea from the school?
No, I learned nothing. We were under, South Australia was very pro-British, and about all that we learnt about was British history. We learned nothing about other countries.
Nothing about other countries?
No.
No Japan, no Asia, no China?
We didn't really learn too much about Japan. We knew, of course, that Japan was our enemy during World War II, but that was about all. I did make some studies and found that Japan had invaded Korea, a little bit about Manchuria and that area, but not a lot. I was not a student at that stage, and I had very little knowledge of Korea. But I did have some idea of the communist desire to take over.
How? What did you know about the communists?
I knew that the communists, under Joseph Stalin, at the end of the war, used all of their power to capture as many countries in Europe as they could. They infiltrated down into China and also into North Korea, and they were a threat to the stability of the Asian area as they had been in Europe.
Very good, very good. So basically you didn't know nothing about Korea.
No, I had really no knowledge at all, other than the fact that Korea was a country close to China, and it had been dominated by Japanese many years before. That's about all that I knew.
Have you been, when did you go to Korea?
In 1953.
53. What month?
May.
May. So it was right before the armistice.
Yes, that's right. Right before the major battle at the Hook.
Yeah.
Which I guess had some bearing on bringing the war to a close.
And when did you leave Korea?
The latter part of 53.
So
I was stationed in Iwakuni in Japan, old Japanese Naval Air Base. It's where we had our maintenance squadron and 77 Squadron plus United Nations forces, Royal Navy, American aircraft and so forth. But there was no point in remaining over there as far as my services went. My role was to go back to Iwakuni.
So tell me, you never been in the Korean soil?
I have never been
into the Korean land?
Well, only when I was there. I mean, Busan and Daegu and
Oh, you were
Incheon.
there?
Oh yeah, and Seoul and those country areas round about, seeing how the native people lived. I was very impressed with the way that out in the country that they would create a dugout, mud bricks and straw thatching on their roofs, making it very good as far as the cold in the winter. And one of the things I was amazed by, I was out in a patrol in the country area, not far from Kimpo, and I saw this man going along with 2 blocks of ice, one either side of his
A-frame.
A-frame. And I asked my interpreter, where did he get the ice from? There's nothing here. He said, in the winter time when the rivers froze over, they cut the ice out They have a huge hole in the ground, and they go down and they pack the ice down with rice padding, and they go layer after layer. And when somebody in the summer wants ice, the man goes down the ladder, gets the box of ice, brings them up. I thought, that is marvellous. That is very ingenious to do that, because my people in South Australia, we lived up in the country area. It was very hot in the summer and cold and wet in the winter, and we built our houses similarly. Wide verandas, high ceilings, straw over the ceilings to control the temperature flow. So I was very impressed with the average South Korean.
But so your main base was Iwakuni, right? In Japan. In Japan.
Oh, Iwakuni.
Iwakuni.
Yeah.
But you went to Korea too.
Oh, yes. We were
so you were not Navy, or were you Navy?
Force.
Air Force.
Yes.
Okay. And so, have you been back to Korea after that?
No.
You never been back to Korea?
No.
Do you know what's going on in Korea?
Yes, I do, because the church I belong to is very active in South Korea. Has been since the late 50s. And so I have seen a lot of film footage of what has happened there, and I have followed some of the progress on their economy and how they have developed it. It's really a remarkable feat.
Could you provide more detail? Because remember, this interview will be checked by young students in the school. So
right.
Give them what you know about the contemporary Korean society compared to the Korea that you saw in 1953.
Well, yes, of course. A modern society didn't came about by chance. It became because I found the Korean people very industrious and very intelligent when it came to developing their economy. But when I went to Korea, it was a third world country, and the people really didn't have much, and the war made it very difficult for them because so much hardship. And one of the things that I didn't like was around Seoul, I saw a lot of children that had missing limbs. One or two of them there I was amazed with. They were using beer cans to walk because they had no legs. And I thought, well, that was...
No leg at all?
No legs at all.
And they were able to use this beer can?
They're thinking, they say they want to walk around, so they had beer cans and they walked with their arms and dragged their leg, dragged their posterior along the ground. So I was not impressed with the way that
children have been treated.
People had conducted themselves during that time. Yes, a lot of.
Like what?
Well,
be honest. It's okay.
Okay, the Americans had a habit of blowing things up. And a lot of the damage around Seoul, the city, and that was through American artillery. And I went to one place, there were no buildings at all around, just so, but right in the center of this open space and all the rubble was a Catholic church. And it had its original stained glass windows, and there were no marks or evidence of any damage to their walls. And I thought, isn't that remarkable? Yes, my experiences in South Korea, apart from my responsibilities in the Air Force, was to gain as much as I could about how the people lived and what they did. And so I saw a country here where people use their ingenuity to keep themselves alive, to grow food, and to live in a very basic way. And then, when we come back to today, and we see this very prosperous and very thriving economy, it is quite remarkable.
Do you know how large the Korean economy is now? What rank is in the world?
My understanding, the last time I checked, it was the 6th largest in the world.
Oh, that's a little bit off.
Some people say it's the 10th.
Yeah, by the GDP, it's the 11th largest economy in the world,
okay,
but
yeah.
it's the 7th largest trading partner to the United States. But think about it. The Korea you saw in 1950, and now Korea is the 11th largest economy in the world, ahead of Australia. Can you believe that?
Well, it is surprising. But when you met the Korean people, it really wasn't surprising. They were very intelligent and had a great desire to create something out of their country.
So you're not surprised?
I'm surprised it happened so quickly.
That's right.
But I'm not surprised. I have many South Korean friends today, and
Here in Gold Coast?
yes, here on the Gold Coast, and I see their enterprise, and so I'm not surprised. But it happened really very quickly.
Yeah. Do you know that the Australia teaching about the Korean War in the history classes in high school or middle school? Do you know about that? Whether we teach or not here?
No. When I went to school, the only thing that you were taught was British history.
I see. Now, you don't know whether we're teaching or not?
I don't.
Okay.
No.
But why is it forgotten in the people's mind, even though there is such a clear successful outcome came out of the war that you fought for? Why is it known as forgotten?
Well,
why we don't teach?
The war was forgotten because it was right after World War II, and the people had become very tired of war and of seeing military personnel everywhere. When the Korean War started, we found the cities, particularly cities like Melbourne and Sydney, crowded out with men in uniform. And people, they'd just finished 5-6 years of that, and they weren't very interested. And so when you were posted to Korea, they weren't interested.
And obviously it's one of the small countries in Asia, and nobody knew at the time, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Do you want to go back and see what's been done in Korea?
Well, I have been offered that before, and I have not seriously considered it.
Why not?
Well,
do you have a bad memory?
No, I don't have a bad memory. I've just thought about it. I have been involved in other things up until recently, served missions for my church throughout the world, and have been involved with helping individuals and countries develop. And so now I'm here on the Gold Coast. I just serve as a chaplain in the hospitals to add to the things I need to do to keep myself busy.
Got it.
So I haven't seriously considered it. I'm not saying I wouldn't go, but up to this stage there have been so many other things that have been priority.
And you said that you joined the Air Force because the Australian Air Force was one of the most first UN Air Forces that actually participated in the Korean War because they were in Japan at the time, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so let us talk about
we went to Japan as an occupation force.
Right.
So it was a natural flow on that the services of the Australian Air Force and Army could participate in the war so quickly. And of course, some of those early pilots and that were flying World War II aircraft, Mustang P-51, and then later, of course, the
F-86.
They brought in the Gloucester Meteor Mark 8, which was a very let's say, old aircraft in the sense of being an interceptor, so the squadron finished up doing ground support. And we had people like John, who flew there, and we had a great respect for the pilots, but our job was to keep them flying.
So tell me about, when did you join the Air Force in Australia?
I joined the Air Force in 1951, early 51.
Where did you get the basic military training?
Lebanon Air Base.
Could you spell it?
Yes, Laberton.
Laberton. Ton.
Leverton.
Leverton, where is it?
That's in Victoria.
Victoria.
Yes.
And how long was it?
Pardon?
The basic military training, how was it?
There was 3 months basic military training, and then we did other training courses, of course, in New South Wales, and also in technical training,
yeah,
and service in port in Point Cook.
Point Cook.
Yeah.
And so then, when did you go to Japan?
Well, I was invited to volunteer to serve in 77 Squadron when I was based at Point Cook.
Mm-hmm.
And that was early in 1952.
So when did you go to Japan?
1952.
Two.
Yeah.
And you stayed in Iwakuni.
Iwakuni
Yeah.
is the old Japanese Naval Air Base.
Right. Naval Air Base, and you stayed there. And then, when did you go to Korea?
When I was transferred to Korea in May
of 1953.
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because they needed replacements. You did a tour of duty as it was required to maintain aircraft. It was in the Air Force. It was a rotary exchange.
So rotations.
Yeah.
What did you hear from those returning soldiers from Korea about the Korean War when you were in Japan? Anything you remember about the war that they fought before you went there?
Yes.
What
well,
did you
I
hear?
had friends in 3rd Battalion, Jimmy Bryans and others. They served at various places. They spoke about some of their war experiences. I mean, it was interesting, but we were not exposed that way. I mean, the closest I ever got to the conflict was when we went up to 2nd Battalion, which near the Hook, and that was in June '53, just before the conclusion of hostilities. But you need to speak to people that had involvement in the army if you want to.
Yeah, I have heard about it. So, and I know about the battle. But tell me, where did you go to first in Korea? Where did you land it from Japan?
Oh, to Gimpo.
Gimpo.
Oh, yes, Gimpo, just north of Seoul.
And what was your unit at the time in Korea?
77 Squadron.
Still 77
Yes.
Squadron. And what was your specialty?
Mine was airframe.
Airframe?
Yes.
What does that do?
Well, we were a little versatile because we could work on engines or airframes, armament, but my main responsibility was to ensure that the airframes of the aircraft were in top condition, did repairs and maintenance. Any major maintenance was done in Japan, but we did minor maintenance and kept them flying over in.
So you basically maintaining the basic shape of the airplane.
Yes, well, that's right.
What was your rank at the time?
I was a leading aircraftsman, which isn't very high, but that's all I needed.
How much were you paid by the Australian government?
How were we paid?
Yeah.
Very poorly.
Very poorly, but can you tell me how many shillings? 27 shillings? 30
gosh.
shillings?
You're really testing my memory now.
Yeah. You are young.
Yeah. Look, I couldn't be exactly sure. I'd have to go and look at my pay book, which I've kept.
Right.
But it
Approximately.
Approximately, it was probably about £10 a pay.
£10.
Yeah.
With £1, what were you able to buy in Australia at the time?
Oh,
With £1?
a lot of things.
Oh,
A lot of things.
okay.
The average, when I started working, I got 19 and 6 a week as an apprentice. But the average tradesman's wage was £5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We had the opportunity, though, where we were attached to the 67th Technical Reconnaissance Wing of the United States Air Force, and so we had some advantages there that we didn't really have to spend any money in Korea. The Americans supplied us with our food, etc.
Yeah. So what did you do with that money then? Did you gamble?
No. I saved it.
You saved it.
I saved it, and when I came back to Australia, I bought a new car with my savings.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking you. We need to dig out. So how did you involve in the Battle of Hook?
Oh,
I mean, you are the Air Force.
Yes,
you were in
that's
the
right.
7th Squadron.
But we got permission to go up and meet some of the...
You volunteered to go to the Battle of Hook?
Well, I wasn't involved in the battle, but we went up to the front line, or just behind the front line, just to meet our friends and have the opportunity to see what they were experiencing.
How was it? Tell me the details to the young children, students, about the well-known Battle of Hook.
Well,
what did you see there?
There are 2 Australian regiments, the 2nd and 3rd RAF, and the conditions were like most soldiers. They dig into the ground for protection and also for a habitat.
Mm-hmm.
And the weather conditions in the summer, of course, are very, very hot, and in the winter, very, very cold. So there was nothing glamorous about the countryside. It was very harsh, and for the soldiers to maintain their sanity, they would have jokes and everything. They come to the rear area. They had little dugouts set up where they could play cards and have some relaxation. But
kind of R&R.
yeah, kind of an R&R. Yeah. We had R&R in Tokyo, but for those men in the army, the conditions were very, very harsh compared to ours. We had a tent to sleep in, but we did have difficulties with the 5th column infiltrating our area, and in fact, you want to know about Korea, not about me anyhow. So we never knew when we had a red alert whether the soldiers on the outside of our perimeter fence were going to be for us or against us. It just depended on how many people were coming to attack.
Was it severe battle? How severe was it?
Well, that's you'd have to ask someone. It was one of the major battles. I mean, there was large numbers of communist or Chinese troops that came down, and they were going to have a major assault. So there was a lot of activity going on prior to the major assault, and you have to talk to the military men about that.
I'm asking you just see if you had any experience or observation about it. We all know about the Battle of Hook, and at this point I will suggest students to look up more about the Battle of Hook, how Australian soldiers, fought there. What was the most difficult thing? If I ask you to pinpoint one thing out of your whole service in Korea, not in Japan, what was the most difficult thing that bothers you or hard to stand? What would you say?
A difficult thing that bothered me was probably just seeing the amount of injuries and death created by the war. 36. The medical evacuations from the Korea were done by the Australian Air Force, and I have seen many young men, as an example, young 17, because Britain had 17-year-olds going over there, and I saw this young 17-year-old with not a hair on his body, completely burnt, the whole part of his body burnt. He was caught serving in a tank, and of course was hit and suffered severely by fire. But the number of people that lost their lives, the amount of injury that was created on the civilian population, the hardship that they endured, and particularly the children, they were the hard things. I mean, it's for when you're young, you don't worry too much about what happens to yourself because you're invincible.
399 Australian soldiers were being killed during the war, and more than 1,000 Australian soldiers being wounded and missing in action still. Right. And 2 million North and South Korean civilians were being killed and wounded. And this is the Republic of Korea that used to be. And we don't teach about this history. So that's why we are doing this. And we're not just conducting interviews, but we want to make sure that we make curricular resources, lesson plan, primary and secondary resources on the war and its legacy, which is modern Korea, simultaneous economic development and democratization, and we want to make sure that we can teach about these things.
Well, it's very important that what you're doing, because without having the public informed, they can have a lot of things happen to them. But an informed public, and of course we see what's happened in China. They were virtually ignorant, and communism wanted to keep them that way. And now they're in a difficult position because the people have been educated. Yeah. And the same with...
They are coming to Gold Coast, and they know what's going on.
Yes. Yeah. And South Korea, they've educated their people, and their country is thriving. And to keep it that way, they need to make sure that the children are educated. We have a problem in our country that we're not. The children are not educated very much on history, and those who fail to study history are bound to repeat the mistakes.
Exactly. What was the most rewarding moment during your service in Korea?
My most rewarding moment?
Yeah.
My most rewarding moment was when a cannon shell went through the back of the building that I was passing, just 2 feet away from me. It didn't hit me, but it hit a young American serviceman and blew him apart. Another 2 feet and it would have been me. So that was the most rewarding.
Oh, at the sacrifice of that American young man.
Well, I didn't want him to be sacrificed, but I'm sure glad it wasn't me.
That's for sure, right? Yeah, you were still in one piece.
Yes.
Very good. What did you do at the day that armistice was signed, July 27, 1953? Remember the day?
Yes. Yeah, we gave a lot of shouting and expressions of joy that the conflict had been brought to an end, and we celebrated with a little bit of beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With much beer.
With much beer, that's right.
Were you able to write letters back to your family?
I did write. I was engaged to a
you
girl.
were engaged?
Yes, so I would write her letters.
Oh, must have been so hard for you and your fiancé.
Well, yes, harder for her because my mind was full of things I had to do, but it would have been hard for her.
Well, how long did you make friends with her before you engaged?
Well, I met her when I was 18,
Uh-huh.
well, actually, I met her before that. I was 17.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
And I got involved with her. Her father was a farmer, and a wheat farmer, and that's the background of my people. So there was a relationship there, and I got on very well with his daughter. And
Did you marry her?
No, I didn't marry her, actually. She wanted to get married as soon as I got back from overseas, and I said, I'm not ready yet. And she was very disappointed, and she threw the ring at me and said,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
yes. Unfortunately, that's what happened. But
She could be in your car, the brand new car, right?
she was frustrated, I think, with the fact that she
Been
was
waiting.
engaged,
Yeah.
And then I didn't want to get married when I...
You wanted to prepare more, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Looking back all those years, you didn't know about this country at all. Now you know, you were there, and you saw so many tragic moments there. So many people shedding blood. They lost their lives. So many of them. Now you know the modern Korea. Looking back all those years, how do you put this dot into a link? How do you get this something out of those experiences?
Well, I think a country develops
Yeah.
when they have good leadership. And any leadership which deprives individuals of their right to act for themselves has a very limited time in which they can operate. We can see right back through history whether they be communist or the Nationalist Socialist or Nazi Party or the Japanese
Imperialism.
any of those things which deprive individuals of their right to exercise their agency have a very limited time because eventually truth will cut its own way. The people will get educated and they'll realize that they can enjoy a much better life, but they must have good government.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the role of people is to be informed and make sure that they have good government.
What would you say to the world or future generation about the war that you fought for?
What would I say? It had to be the aggression and tyranny of the North Korean, backed by the Chinese, had to be stopped. If it had not have been, then it would be a whole different situation today. So it was something that had to be done, and I believe that the countries that participated did the right thing in supporting South Korea in repelling those invaders. Because look at North Korea today. There has been no progress, not individual.
That's a very good comment. What would you say to the Korean people that you like for the 70th anniversary? This is actually ridiculous, isn't it? Ceasefire on 1953, and we are still technically at war. Never been replaced by the peace treaty.
Yes.
I don't think any precedents there in the history of 20th century. You know, what would you say to the Korean people about this war?
Well, it's unfortunate that countries like America, Australia and others have had to maintain military forces to keep South Korea supported with their military, supporting their military to keep these people out of their country. I would say you have to do everything you can to support the cause of freedom, because the cost, there's always a cost for freedom, not only in the lives of people, but there's a monetary cost, and it's a very, very big cost. So I would say to the people today, keep doing what you're doing, keep the channels of freedom open, and be prepared to pay the price to do that.
Thank you, Peter. This is my great honor and pleasure to have a chance to talk to you and listen from you. I think this will be a great lesson for our young generations. And thank you for your service for the Korean people. We were able to achieve this because you fought for us to give a chance to rebuild it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, mine was minuscule compared to some of the effort and sacrifices made, but I'm grateful that I had the opportunity, because it was to me a great lesson in humanity to see what can be done when people direct their minds and get the right sort of leadership.
I hope that you have a chance to go back to Korea to see what's been done, and going around and visiting around all these big churches in Korea too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.